Hello, welcome to the ParaBiz Podcast, number 3. Oh, we're gonna have to edit this out.
No, leave it in. We'll leave it in.
Okay, leave it in. Episode number 3. Make sure to follow us on socials at ParaBiz Media and visit our website, parabiz.biz. How are you guys doing today, Jay and Pi?
We're doing
I
good.
am teaching.
I'm considering a career in stock trading now. I thought it was a real gamble for a while, and I didn't want to potentially lose all my money, but now I figured out a way for infinite profits with no risk.
How would you do that? I don't understand. And without giving us financial advice, because we are not giving you financial advice.
We are not giving financial advice at all.
If I were to not give you financial advice, I would tell you there's this really cool Twitter account and a website where it just sort of tells you what to trade. And you magically make money.
What? How? It tells you how to trade. What kind of secret algorithm do they use to tell you how to trade?
Well, really, they just follow this one random guy. I don't know. This guy.
At least we think it's a guy.
Yeah, I think it's a guy. I don't know.
Who is it?
But
We're so bad.
They haven't lost money yet, from what I can tell.
Really? Wow. I mean, what are we talking about? Like, how much money are we talking?
I actually don't know. Millions.
Millions. And who is this person? What is their last name?
It starts with a P.
Starts with the P. What is? I don't. You got to tell us. Who is this person?
Something Pelosi.
Pelosi. Ooh, Pelosi. That sounds. That's a familiar name. Pelosi, the famous stock trader, Pelosi.
Yeah.
Makes millions.
I think you forgot inside stock trader, Pelosi.
Surely that would be illegal, and you wouldn't be able to inside stock trade, especially if they're a public figure, right? Are they a public figure?
Look, guys, all jokes aside, Nancy Pelosi is not insider trading, okay? What her husband does has nothing to do with her at all. And, he acts on his own free will apart from any information that may or may not come of her office. All right? Let's be serious here.
So
That's it. All right, moving on to the next topic.
Yeah, that's the story, basically. Nancy Pelosi, on a representative's salary, has made hundreds of millions of dollars in the stock market.
Excuse me, it's not Nancy Pelosi, it's her husband.
Sorry.
Get your facts right.
Right.
Their joint net worth, has grown.
In the loosest possible sense.
It's ridiculous. Everyone knows what it is. It's corruption, very obviously so. But what typically happens in these scenarios is it's not necessarily that these politicians are passing laws that specifically benefit a corporation or a business or an industry. What's really happening is, legislation, the rules of regulation, they typically hurt businesses. That's what they do. And so when the politicians know that in some subcommittee that they're a part of, or they get some information from one of the other politicians, they get information that an industry or a sector or a business is going to be regulated, then it might hurt the underlying business model and thus hurt their stocks. So what do? They divest. They take their money out of those stocks and put them in other more successful stocks or things that aren't being necessarily regulated or being hurt by legislation. And that's the number one rule of money that, like Warren Buffett says, don't lose money. So as long as you don't lose money in the stock market, you can grow. Because it takes, if you lose 10% over a year, the next year to break even, you have to make 11%. You don't have to make 10% back. You have to make 11% gains. And so if you never lose that money, you're always compounding. And so that's typically how these are working. These corrupt politicians are working.
Well, it's interesting. Twitter actually banned the original account that was tracking her trades. Anyone that's
say insider trading, I say free market economy. Okay, to quote her.
Right. Well, to anyone who's out there making money off of Twitter or off of Reddit or wherever you're getting your information from, all the power to you. You keep riding the train while it lasts, because who knows how long that will go on.
Yeah, just be very cautious with when you're trusting your money to soulless corporations. That is that's our
Speaking of
first
soulless
topic.
Corporations.
Speaking of the
Twitter.
soulless corporations, let's talk about social media companies.
Oh boy.
What's the lowdown, Pi? What's the lowdown on this?
So it's been a very exciting week for all of the alt media, as they like to call it, the Twitter clones. So I think it's, well, the first one was Gab, right? I think that split off from Twitter when? Like
2015?
2015, 2016, around that time frame. But started by a guy named Andrew Torba. But recently, in the past few years, we've had a few that have come and gone. We've had Parler, we've had Getter. Getter's the most recent one. No E after the T is kind of like a certain dating app that very interesting people use.
He's talking about Grindr.
Right, Grindr.
Never heard it.
But as we've seen over the last year, Parler failed because they failed to allow the free speech they promised, but also they were subject to many data breaches, this sort of thing.
And they were
And
reliant
now-
upon the infrastructure of the tech companies, and they just got deplatformed too.
Right, of course. Well, they initially got removed from the App Store, and then they got removed from Amazon Cloud Services. Eventually, I think they found hosting services elsewhere, but through over moderation, they managed to get themselves back on the App Store, which good for them, but they also lost all their consumer base in the process.
Yay.
But and then they had data breaches and all that because these people do not know how to develop a website. Speaking of which, Parler and Getter, the two newest of the bunch, both closed source, both proprietary software, which isn't always a bad thing, but when you are competing with companies like Twitter, your infrastructure will be comparably very weak. And not only that, you do not know how these algorithms that they implement will manipulate how you perceive things, how you think.
Very true. And I'm not one to take CEO or faceless corporations on their word. As we all saw that Joe Rogan podcast when Tim Pool just raked Jack Dorsey over those claims that we do not censor and we do not pull down controversial posts. Wow, that was foreshadowing to something, wasn't it? It's interesting that you say that, Pi, because I've had a conversation last week with a buddy of mine about what to do with social media. Everyone that doesn't know anything about it, and this is just ignorance, just comes with not knowing what's going on, says they're a private company. Shouldn't they be able to regulate whoever they want? Sure. Yeah. As a private company, you have the right to serve to, who you want to serve and who you want to do business with. Unless you state in your business models in the beginning of your inception back in, I think it was 2006, Twitter started.
Mm-hmm. I
But
think
they
07, 08.
Yeah, they said they wanted to be synonymous with the regular society. What does that mean, synonymous? It means they want to be a part of everyday life. They want to be a part of your daily routine. They want to be another way that you communicate with your friends. And they did a pretty good job at it. Now, that's great for them. Gets a lot of money, gets a lot of content out there, and it gets a lot of communication between a lot of people that couldn't do it as easier any other way. But the important thing to notice is that when you get big enough, you start servicing so many people. There's certain rules that you got to follow, because you're turning into something other than a commodity. You're turning into a utility. And so what that means is there's certain rules that you have to follow when you're servicing these people. You could take the example of ComEd or just your basic water bill. The rule is you pay your bill, you get your water. You pay your bill, you get your electricity. You pay your bill, you get your heat. They don't discriminate. They can't discriminate. Let's look at AT&T. This is a very easy example. AT&T has a few rules. You pay their fees and you get service. And what happens when you get your cell service? You get to talk to anybody you want about what you want, and for as long as you want, as long as you pay for it, right?
Why don't they censor you?
Well, because they can't. It's against the law for them to censor you. Why? Because it is the term common carrier. A common carrier was developed when you have big corporations such as AT&T, Verizon, or when you have like Pace buses or like Greyhound buses. Those buses are synonymous with the economy. Everyone uses them. They are used as utilities, not as commodities anymore. And so the federal government steps in and says, you are what we call a common carrier. You service a certain number of the population, which means that you no longer can decide who you get to service and who you do not. We're not limiting your business. We're saying you cannot discriminate no longer. And Twitter has openly stated from the get-go, we want to be synonymous with your daily life, with everything else that's going on. The definition of a common carrier. That means that they should be forced to the regulation of your water, of AT&T. The exact same thing. Now, the argument comes in with people that say, well, they're a private business. Won't they stay private? I mean, that means public. No. It doesn't mean public. That means you're following the law of the land. You're following the laws that they set in for corporations of this size. Because, like we said, it's an anti-discrimination law. Now, the other step is people are like, well, what's the difference between a publisher and a platform? They're a platform. Yeah, that's fine. You can be a platform. Your AT&T is a platform. In some ways, your water bill is a platform. They don't discriminate. They don't care. Like AT&T is not held liable for what you say on your phone bill. The water company is not held liable if you start, I don't know, filling up your house with, if you start using it to cook meth in your basement, you use the water from your water bill. They're not going to be charged for that. They're not going to be held liable for it. But when you start segregating, or when you start discriminating, or editing certain amount of people or certain things that can be put out there, it means that you now are declaring that you have a role in what is being put out, which means you're in control of your content. Even if you didn't intend to, the federal government says, oh, you're now editing. You're now discriminating. That means you actually have an active role in what comes out, which means we're going to hold you liable for whatever is said on your platform.
Yeah, so anyway, I think we should move on to talking about why Getter, Gab, and Truth Social have been in the news over the past week. Real quick, we were talking about utilities and how utilities cannot prevent free expression and this sort of thing. That's not necessarily true. If we look at Section 230, which is this, I think it's the code that Donald Trump actually wanted to get rid of. This law explicitly gives internet service providers, or what they define as a interactive computer service, should not be held liable for, I'm just going to read it right here, any voluntary action taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable. So otherwise objectionable could be anything. Whether or not such material is constitutionally protected.
It's also important to note that, even though you may be able to express yourself through these platforms freely, these utilities like your cell phone, SMS, it doesn't mean that the government can't request information from it, which they frequently do and they can get a hold of because of legislation that's been passed over the past 30, 40 years. Now, why Getter is in the news, why these are in the news, and why Truth Social, which is Trump's future platform, is getting a little heat right now, is because, basically, the CEO of Getter went on a long-form interview on the Timcast, Tim Pool's show, and a lot of things came to light with how he runs his company, and it's not good for people who actually like free speech. For people who actually like free speech. So to make a long story short, right? A couple of weeks ago, Joe Rogan, he says he's gonna get on Getter, right? He's gonna get on Getter. So he makes an account, he goes there, he posts a little bit, and then he looks at his followers, and he's got millions of followers already. How did that happen? Well, it turns out that Getter was, in order to inflate the number of users on their platform, they were automatically porting over Twitter followers to your account. And so you could have a inflated amount of followers. And so Joe Rogan didn't like that. He complained about it, and he basically stopped posting on Getter. But because of his influence, they received a lot of new users, went into the, kind of got some momentum, right? And so the CEO goes on Tim Pool to talk about stuff, his platform, all that. And it turns out that Getter is basically just Twitter Lite. They're like Twitter a couple years ago, in 2015, 2016 Twitter. That's basically what they are. That's their terms of services. They're completely reliant upon the infrastructure of Silicon Valley, the app stores, Amazon, all of the above. They will censor you for your political views, which they have already done to some prominent right-wing figures. And they're owned by and controlled by allegedly a Chinese billionaire. And there was some leaked group texts between some of the higher-ups in Getter, where the billionaire in question, his name is Guo, communicated and gave instruction on how to handle the Joe Rogan situation, for example. And on this interview on Tim Pool, he was questioned about it, and he said that this Chinese billionaire, has no input into the company, and basically we found out that was false. Additionally, we've discovered that they are willing to slander and call people, all sorts of things, and just censor them from their platform. So this basically is going to kill Getter, because they claim to be a free speech platform, but they're not. And in response to this, the CEO of Gab, Andrew Torba, he went on the Timcast show a couple days later. And he had this great scene where Tim asks him, hey, what are your terms of service? And he pulls out a little from his jacket. He pulls out a pocket constitution. He goes to the First Amendment and he reads it. And that is that's the rule. If it's legally acceptable speech, then it's allowed on Gab, which is really as best as you can get from a free speech platform.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I think Gab's their only restriction is they do not allow pornography, and that kind of goes into what Truth Social is, at least what they're claiming to try to do. Truth Social claims they're trying to make a family-friendly environment, and they're going to be doing this through algorithms and through content moderation with a heavy hand. We'll see how exactly that plays out, how heavy that hand is. But regardless, I think people are going to be very careful about what they post on there. I think when you even set the precedent that you can say the wrong thing and that will get you banned, people aren't just going to stick around on your platform. especially if their favorite creators have been banned. They'll just head over to Gab, where their favorite creator is still posting every single day.
I think another reason why Truth Social is probably going to fail. They're implementing a family-friendly, or they say they're going to implement a family-friendly censorship policy, which is fine. I'm actually okay with that. No pornography, cursing, or whatever. However, if you're trying to build a free speech platform, that's not exactly what people are looking for, and that is indicative that they are going to probably censor more speech, more radical political speech. But one of the main reasons I think Truth Social will fail is because since 2015, since Gab's inception, it was really the first Twitter alternative that actually had some momentum behind it. People have been getting banned from Twitter constantly. People on the right wing or with views which are non-acceptable to the establishment, which every year tends to be more and more people. They keep getting banned from Twitter, and then where do they go? They migrate over to Gab. And basically what's happened is that there is a couple million super users who of your platform who will use your platform forever, and they will champion it, and they will, that's their main primary social media platform. And these super users are not going to leave your platform unless you give them a reason. So you ban them, for example. And Gab does not have this reason for these users to get off their platform. There is no reason for a Gab user to get on Truth Social if everybody can use Gab, and they are already using Gab, and people who they already like and communicate with regularly are using it. And so I don't see, I can see that because it has Trump behind it, it'll gain a little bit of momentum at the start. But, and maybe it has some, like a political cult following, where like politicians who are trying to get elected, under the Trump banner will use it frequently. But past that, like I don't see normal people wanting to get on Truth Social. It just, there's going to be a lot of QAnon stuff, but those people, I don't think it's going to gather enough momentum traction compared to what Gab already has, and the fact that Gab is already independent of any kind of infrastructure. It's resilient to attacks that the establishment or the tech companies could attack it for. It already has that all set up. So, why would you use an inferior platform when you already have that with Gab? In addition to the fact that it is open source. The code is open source. If you go to code.gab.com, you can go see all of the code. You can see if they're manipulating the algorithm because you can read the code. People who are smarter than you maybe can read the code. And you can make your own algorithm on Gab. You can create your own group and then add people's feeds to that group, and people can join your group and see it with you. You can share your algorithm and all that. So really, it's just, why would you use a new platform if that already exists?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the open source, because Truth Social is also supposedly open source. But there's a fun story behind that. So Gab was originally part of the Fediverse. I'm not quite sure the details, but basically they were united under one federated platform called Mastodon. And the Mastodon Fediverse uses the AGPL license, which is a license that allows people to take their code and use it for any purpose, commercialize it, do whatever they want with it, as long as they also publish the source code. So when Gab joined the Fediverse and eventually decided to cut themselves off from the Fediverse and do their own thing, not only did I suppose they wanted to make their code open source, but they were actually required to by the license of Mastodon since they forked it. Truth Social is also a fork of Mastodon, but people didn't know that at first. There was a case, so right when the website was launched, there was an exploit where people could get into the website early and register for it, sign and post all this stuff. And basically these people found all this Mastodon code. They even found Mastodon logos because the site was unfinished. And this was a blatant violation of the AGPL license. And theoretically, under the terms of the AGPL. If you violate it, anyone who has forked that code or used that code can sue and take you down. So right now, Truth Social claims they're open source. If you go to their website, they just have a link to the Mastodon page. They don't actually have their own source code up, which I would argue they're still not in. They're still in violation of the AGPL. But we'll see what happens when the launch day occurs. If they will fully open their source code, or maybe they'll take on the GNU fans, and we'll see what happens.
So, talking about social media platforms and people getting banned off them, what happened to Dan Bongino? Jay, do you know anything that happened with him?
Well, Kay, it's interesting. I heard he subsequently got banned off of YouTube after he left YouTube.
This is correct. So this is kind of funny. It's kind of like we don't want you anyway kind of deal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave. Well, I don't care if you leave. I'm gonna make you leave.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut the door on you first.
It's kind of funny, but I think realistically what they're doing is they want to stop the flow of people from YouTube to Rumble. So Dan Bongino is going full on Rumble. He actually has more followers on Rumble, I believe, than YouTube in the first place.
Well, it's interesting that you say that real fast. The amount of followers he has on Rumble is ridiculous. He's got 2.7 million followers on Rumble. Yeah, 2.07 million.
Yeah, which is crazy. He's probably the number one content producer for Rumble at this point. I don't know if that's true or not, but just from what I see. But yeah, so what they're doing is they want to shut off the ability for people to find his YouTube and then go to Rumble from there. And they also want to shut off that revenue stream. They want to give him any more revenue than necessary, which is understandable from a business perspective. If someone doesn't want to do business with you anymore maliciously, and they encourage people to use your competitor, you're going to shut them down. But I think it's just funny that they did it right after he announced that he was leaving, as a kind of try to spite him.
And another thing that's interesting on top of that, I was looking up, and this is according to reclaimthenet.com or .org. In 2021, in September, so just a couple of months ago, Rumble hit new traffic record of 143 million monthly visits. And so that means they entered in the top 150 most visited websites in the US. For what a lot of people considered for a long time a YouTube wannabe knockoff, that's pretty crazy. And we've seen now that they are breaking away from that, and they're still they're publicly owned, but they're still controlled by the CEO and or by the owner. And they are in a lot of ways partnering with content creators that have come over and are ensuring them, like, they work. When Steven Crowder got that in the middle of last year, when he was going through his problems with his big problems when he was suing Facebook and the voter ID stuff he did last February, he was kicked off for a week, and then he was introduced to Rumble. And Rumble actually is introducing new live feed technology that because Steven Crowder came over there. And in less than a year, Steven Crowder has, I think, 600,000 followers. And that's crazy on Rumble alone, even in just that short a time. Because if I'm correct, they did not upload on Rumble prior to his hard ban for a week back in, I think it was April.
Yeah, I mean, the largest majority of the 200 million that they raised when they went partially public was designated for, at least they said it was designated for, bringing on creators onto the network. So, actively attempting to, with money, get creators onto the network, which is really important, because if your creators on the platform, then you will use that platform more. And so, Rumble's been doing decent job of it so far. I haven't seen a lot of censorship issues yet, though I suspect there might be if they continue to be a Canadian company and they grow bigger. They'll be deplatformed and attacked by the tech companies just the same way. However, I think they have some financial backing in order to fight those kinds of things, unlike what Gab had, where Gab basically survived off people sending in physical checks to a PO box for a while until they were able to set up their own payment system. But yeah, I think Rumble is doing an interesting job. YouTube is obviously afraid of it. They don't want it to happen. They don't want that competitor to rise in power, and that's why they're banning people when they announce that they leave YouTube. So, lesson for this is don't announce you're leaving YouTube. Just like, don't make a video dedicated to it. Just say you are there, and then slowly just say like, I have Rumble exclusive content or something like that, and then try and get your users over there that way.
And one last thought: it's interesting. Always look at the reactions that these companies have. If what they claim that you don't matter really is the truth, they wouldn't care if Dan Bongino left. But the fact that Dan Bongino left is a big deal because they cannot in any way cope with people leaving their systems. Even though they want him gone, they need they need his eyes. They need the people that watch him to be there. That's how they get. Even if they don't get ad revenue from Bongino, which is probably why he was tipped off to leave, he was starting to be hardcore demonetized. Those people are the average. I guarantee you that's not the only video they're watching on YouTube. And so they're just getting traffic, which gets revenue up. That's why they're upset he's leaving. And that's why they still don't want a lot of these conservative people to leave, because it's a lot of ad traffic, even if it's not on their own videos.
All right, let's land the plane with one last topic. Pi.
All right.
What's this Reddit thing going on? What's this Reddit I hear of?
Oh boy, this is the most glorious thing, and it happened just today. So, if anyone's been using Reddit over the past probably like 3 or 4 months actually, there's been this subreddit that's been hitting the front page consistently almost every single day, called Anti-Work. And this subreddit, its sort of stated goal is they want to make it so that people do not have to work unless they really, really want to. And that if you don't work, you should have all your living needs met. You should be able to get an apartment. You should be able to do all this. They're also advocating for people to organize as workers and all this, but like with a greater goal of just let's not work. This is their goal. They don't want to work. This subreddit's becoming more and more popular. They get like some email interviews with MSNBC, I believe. And just very popular subreddit, starting to get some national attention. And with that attention, one of the lovely folks over at Fox News decided it'd be a good idea to give them an interview, a voice and video call interview. And so this man who is, woman, I don't know, decided to call in, and basically this person is the head moderator of r/anti-work, and they are 30 years old, of questionable gender, and they work 25 hours a week proudly as a dog walker. And that's what they inspire to do in life. Well, not all they inspire to do. The other thing they want to do is they want to teach children philosophy. So this is you're going to have to go and search up the full interview. Just search up Anti-Work Fox News interview on YouTube. You'll find it. It'll be the first result. Watch this interview for yourself, and it's the most glorious thing. This interview has caused schism within Reddit. we have a new breakaway subreddit that's called instead of anti-work, it's called work reform. These- I saw these comments on the original anti-work subreddit that were saying stuff like, "This interview was so bad it scared me into going to work today," and and it got so bad the mods had to close the subreddit down, and it is yet to be seen whether they will ever open again. But it's just glorious. Please, if you have the time, look up this video, r/anti-work Fox News interview. You'll love it.
That is the epitome, like the classic modern culture right there. Millennial. Yeah. It's funny because you look at his, like the background of his video, right? It's his room, his apartment or whatever.
Mhm.
It's a complete mess. It looks terrible.
It's trash. He has this grainy webcam. He's rocking back and forth as he talks like he's on speed or Adderall.
Allegedly. We don't know if he probably isn't, but allegedly, okay. But I think it's funny. It's the picture of who you wouldn't want to represent your movement, and it's just it probably
one bad
killed
interview. Just for reference, the r/anti-work subreddit had around 400,000 subscribers. Today, a new subreddit created 150,000 subscribers. Half of the user base migrated over to this new subreddit because of how bad it was. This one interview ruined an entire movement of non-workers.
of non-workers. Thank you for landing the plane like that. I'd like to thank all our.
I just one pretty thing before we go. I wanted to say something.
Do it quickly.
I'm doing it quickly, man. It's interesting to say. I guarantee you that entire subreddit was just an echo chamber. And the first time they had to explain their ideas, they were not only shown how ridiculous they were, how idiotic you look when you tell them, and the reaction that an actual established person of the media gave you, and it completely destroyed the movement. And that's the marketplace of ideas. They can't handle it. They live in a echo chamber.
Yeah, typing things on the internet is a little different than talking to people in real life. I'd like to thank all our listeners for listening to the third ParaBiz podcast. You can find us on socials, specifically Gab, at ParaBiz Media. And you can check out our website, parabiz.biz. That's parabiz, B-I-Z, .biz, B-I-Z. I hope you guys all have a good day. You guys want to give them a good goodbye?
See you guys.
Alrighty.
See you on episode 4.
Have a good day.